Hello and welcome to the Summer School and YouTube channel. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts, hello and welcome to the podcast. My name is Nico, and I'm excited today because I will be speaking to an awesome guest. Why? Because she's out here playing 4D chess. And I'm willing to bet you, the viewer, or just like me, you saw the name or the words Black Lie or Black Minds Matter, and you thought maybe the Keenan and Kel reaction of "oh, here it goes," or you saw Black Minds Matter and you said, "I already like Black Lives Matter. What's going on here?" No matter what your response was, she got your attention. And a little bit of a spoiler alert to that group, because I too had my initial reflexive reactions to seeing the name of her organization, but upon listening to her journey and her thoughts on education, I walked away with a profound sense of respect and admiration for her work. So the saying goes, don't judge a book by its cover. And I totally suggest that you follow that mantra, because if you disregard my guest today and what she has to say purely because of the name of the organization, you will be losing out on a lot of really beautiful information. So, without further ado, my guest today, Denisha Allen. Hello and welcome to the show.
Hey, Nico, and I absolutely love your introduction of our organization, Black Minds Matter. Thanks so much for having us on.
No problem. I'm really excited. So, uh, go ahead. I've given a brief introduction on what you do, but what is it you do for the listener? What is an average day at the office for you and your work day?
Yeah. Well, first, you did such an amazing introduction and led up everyone to, yeah, people have gut reactions to the name Black Minds Matter.
Yeah.
And like you said, I love it. Actually, it gives me energy. And is why I won't change the name
Don't.
of the organization. We started during the height of the social unrest in this country and across the nation in 2020 with the murder of George Floyd. I am, and I'll tell my story, my personal experience a little bit later, but I was personally frustrated when I saw that there was no attention given to education when we had this conversation across the country of, bettering the Black American people.
Yeah.
We had organizations and companies across the country looking at their systems saying, are we racist? That was the question, really.
Yeah.
We had uh, 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 different organizations, big and small, media outlets, everyone looking at if they were racist. And you had a swelling up of grassroots initiatives and organizations like Black Lives Matter who supported whatever we thought of. To be honest, if we said that this planter is racist, they were coming down, like it
Yes.
was coming
Yes.
down. That was
Yeah.
how serious it was at the time. And great, that was great, whatever. But when we had syrup bottles, pancake boxes change their logo in the spirit of Black empowerment, but no attention was given to the education system in that same conversation of empowering Black people in this country and eliminating racist structures or systemic racism, we weren't talking about education. I became really frustrated with that. And that's why we started Black Minds Matter. It started with an op ed that I wrote about these frustrations. And then it kind of spiraled based on, community. It just has spiraled into this national movement, which I'm proud to lead. And I'm proud to lead it because I'm a beneficiary of school choice. I went to a private school on a scholarship, um, and my life was changed. And I don't say that to be cliche at all. I failed the third grade twice because I couldn't read. I thought I was dumb. And it wasn't until I began to go to a different school that everything changed. I would have ended up like many of my family members who had dropped out of school, who'd had babies as teenagers, but that didn't happen. And the only reason why it didn't happen was because I had a quality education in a loving environment where they pushed me to obtain excellence. You know, that was the standard. The standard was excellence.
Yes.
And for me, I see a lot of the disparities and the things that are happening across our country. And to me, it all goes back to education. It goes back to that K through 12 space when you have an incarceration system that counts the number of beds that they're going uh, to make and they'll need by the third grade reading levels. That's education. That's a system of incarceration that's built on a lack of education. And so that has to change. And that's why I do the work that I do, because of my personal experience. And I see the difference that it has made in the lives of students, not just in my own life, but across the country.
Yeah. Yeah. I won't go too much into your background because I learned about you through the Cut the Bull podcast, and I know Shamika asked you
Yeah,
all the funny questions, like not the funny, the real questions.
yeah,
So anyone
yeah,
viewing this, go and
yeah.
watch that interview because it really adds
Yeah,
context to
I
just the
was sitting
journey
there
she's
with
gone
that.
on.
Yeah, with Shamika. So, yeah, please go back and watch that episode because she was literally the only person. I've done many interviews. I've shared my story, and she's like, "Wait a minute now, hold on. What about your mama? How could
Yeah.
your mama? Like, wait a minute." She asked the real questions behind the story, and it's like, "Wait a minute, no, wait a minute. We gotta."
Do you want to speak on that yourself and present that information in case
Well, it's in
yeah.
case people are wondering.
Yeah.
So yeah, my I grew up with my biological mom from K to 5, and
Mhm.
during that time, I failed the third grade twice. We moved around constantly. Was by the book homeless. Didn't know
Yeah.
that at the time.
Yeah.
But that's what we were. And then in the 6th grade, I began to live permanently with my godmother.
Mhm.
So there's to the conversation of stability and as it relates to my academic journey. And in the 6th grade, I began to live permanently with my godmother, and everything changed. Entire environment changed. And so, when telling my story on the Cut the Bull podcast, like Nico is referencing, Shamika, she was just like,
Just
"Let's go back to
asking.
that." Because that's
Just
not
asking.
normal.
Yeah.
And it's not normal because in a success story, in any success story, and especially in Black and brown people's lives, if one of the arguments against school choice is you have to have a present and an engaging parent. They say that the only students who are going to benefit from school choice are those who have active parents in their lives.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, actually, that wasn't the case for me. That wasn't the case at all. I did not have an active parent in my life. Thankfully, I had an active role model, an active adult, you
Yes.
know, in my life who made the decision, because of course your children can't go out and apply for scholarships by themselves. They kind of
Yeah.
need a parent, a guardian, or
Yeah.
someone to sign up.
Crazy
So
laws. Yeah.
yeah, right. So, yeah, you need an active adult in your life, but that does not have to be your biological parent. And so, yeah.
So what was the culture shock of this new rigorous school that just held you accountable?
So, on a lower scale, which is actually quite shocking, I went to school, my local district school. Maybe by the end of the first week, teachers were just done being nice to you. I just say it like they were done being nice. The billboards were like that billboard that was up for welcoming you into school for that year stayed up probably all till Christmas. I'll give you
Yeah.
that till Christmas.
Yeah.
Coming into this new school, I was greeted at the door with smiles, with hugs. If I came in looking despondent, the teachers would pray. It was a Christian school. They would pray with me. They would pray, and it wasn't the case of, oh, she comes from a poor family. She comes from the Merriweathers. We know how they are. We know what they've been up to for years. So we're just going to hold her to that standard. No, you're going to be better
Mhm.
than your past. You're going to be better than your family. It was a spirit of excellence. And they smiled and greeted us at the door, and it didn't just stop past the first week. They did it from the moment I entered the school to the day I graduated from the school, with the same big old smile greeting the big teenagers as they would the little cute kids.
Yeah.
And that made a difference for me as a kid. I went to about 5 or 6 different elementary schools, and they all were the same in that aspect, that they didn't seem like they cared,
Yeah.
for me as a person.
Yeah. I can relate to you. I guess from kindergarten through second, I went to public school, and my parents, I talk to them now because all I've done is taught at public schools myself. And they said, yeah, we left because it got to a point where you were teaching the other kids how to read instead of the teacher. And it wasn't like you're better than anyone, but if you're in school, you need to be the one being taught. So I remember getting taken to also, it was a Catholic school, and I didn't really have much of a religious background, but it was so shocking how strict everything was.
Yeah.
And not in a bad way. I mean, in third grade, I remember coming home every day being angry at my third grade teacher, who I'm still friends with to this day, and always ask for advice. It's just like, oh, this is terrible, blah, blah, blah. She's so mean. And now as an adult, I never compromise being strict and holding the kids accountable. We might have fun, you might enjoy me and all that and think I'm the best teacher, but oh man, there's going to be days where it's like, hey, you missed your deadline, I'm not going to feel sorry for you. So how for you, I'd like to hear about you talked again on the Cut the Bull podcast, but about that moment where one of your teachers asked you to read aloud. Despite
and so I, like I said, and I failed the third grade twice because I couldn't read. And I was not held accountable by my teachers. If a teacher called on me to read in my local schools, if I stumbled, through words, let's just go to someone else. We'll go to the next student. And I was not forced to continue reading. So I couldn't get through sentences. I couldn't get through passages at all. And when I started to go to Esprit de Corps, this small private school in Jacksonville, Mrs. Hart, remember, Miss Hart, I did not raise my hand to be called on to read. Why would I embarrass myself at this new school? It was not Catholic, but we had uniforms from it was something you had from head to toe. I'm
a fan of it. I'm a fan of it.
I love it too. And it was, and so I'm like, I am not about to embarrass myself. All these kids are super smart. No. Miss Hart called on me to read. She would always call on me to read without raising my hand. I would stumble through whatever I was assigned to read, crying, hyperventilating, like wanting it to be over. She never would go to another student. The students, I'm looking around because I would previously, I would fight. I'm ready to defend myself. I know how this works when you're new in a school. No one laughs at me. No one is laughing at me. And Miss Hart is not letting up. She is not going to go to another student. I was made to finish the passage. She helped me through it, of course. And that's the type of tough love and how I learned how to read, and I went from making D's and F's sometimes just F's, to making A's and B's by my first 9 weeks, my first semester at this new school. And that wasn't social promotion. I worked my tail off, and the teachers were there to help me. They were there to push me. And when I look back and I remember those times, I'm just so grateful, because I'm not gonna lie, I probably was me sitting in the classroom looking at someone like me struggle with reading so bad, crying in the 6th grade.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't have been as nice. So I just thank God that I was
What would,
there.
if you were the teacher, what would you have done? Be honest, be honest.
Not the teacher, a peer,
Oh,
like a
okay. If you were
student,
a
like,
peer.
oh my gosh, she is really like,
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I probably wouldn't have been as nice to myself,
I'm
but
glad at least you're being honest about it.
I am being honest because they
So
did.
credit to those classmates of yours.
Yes, and we're all still friends to this day,
Good.
and it is, yes, credit to them because, and many of I actually many of them would help me, to be honest, like they would help.
Yeah.
And I went from, like I said, making D's and F's to A's and B's to straight A's by the time I graduated from high school. I actually ended up, I was 2 grade levels behind. I could have skipped and gotten into my right grade, but I only ended up skipping to 1 grade level because I was just too nervous. And I had that a lot of the mindset that I had as a kid in elementary school still haunts me today, imposter syndrome and not feeling like I'm enough, and
Mhm.
those are things that were imparted in me from educators, and because I was not doing well academically, I didn't view myself as smart and all this stuff. And so yeah, I only skipped 1 grade level. And that was I like my peers were like, "Come on, Denisha, like you can do it. Like just go.
Yeah.
It's fine."
Yeah.
Yeah,
I I I I really admire your teacher for doing that.
yeah,
I I don't know what year that was. Education has dramatically shifted in terms of what, like there's not much incentives for teachers to do that today.
mm,
Not necessarily because they just won't, but it's almost like you're up against parents who are eager, some parents that are eager to sue if
yeah,
you put their child in any uncomfortable situation. I mean, I've had emails from parents saying that they are completely shocked that their child is sitting next to a kid that they don't get along with.
mm,
So the idea of having you read and sit with that discomfort,
yeah,
I mean, that's where growth happens,
yeah,
is having students sit in that discomfort, and realizing it isn't as terrifying as they thought it was.
yeah,
Do they go to an A or a B in your case? Maybe, maybe not. Or they just feel a little more confident the next time comes around.
exactly.
So I'd like to ask you about this on reading, because with your organization, you want to bring make higher quality education accessible to Black and Brown communities, or at least
Yeah,
lower income areas. Is that a fair assessment of what your organization does?
yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly right.
I always thought about this because, throughout my professional developments, they always kept showing us, the equity versus equality picture. And sometimes I would just push back and say, sometimes if you're pursuing equity in terms of keeping everyone at the same level, you can miss big moments of progress for someone who might be a little behind. So, for example, I had a student in my class who was Latin American, and she came into my class well below grade level reading. And we did these iReady diagnostic reports 3 times a year. And on the latest one, she had a 35-point jump. She
Mm,
was working with me through phonics, did some tutoring, and she was enjoying my class and always asking for extra work. I put that forth and I said, look, just because this person is below grade level, now she has the gift of loving to read and write in her free time.
yeah,
And please tell me if I'm wrong, is that a victory of some sort, to leave with a gift of just enjoying those things? Because I think sometimes as educators we get too lost in the grade or the data we can collect, which I am all for having that available. It's helpful to have that data. But the joy of the craft is something, like if you get A's in a subject and then you don't care about it, is that as much as the student who gets B's and just loves it and maybe just didn't do the work as well as you?
yeah. I mean, I'm reading this book called Agency by Ian Rowe,
Yes, I was going
and
to talk about that too. I didn't
yeah,
know.
and so I think that you know yeah, the equity versus equality. I don't think that even with that photo that you mentioned where everyone's standing up on the
The books,
barrels, and
box,
then
wooden box. Yeah.
yeah, the wooden boxes, and it's like, okay, equality. Everybody has the same level of box.
Yeah.
And equity. You
Yeah.
have a tall man, he doesn't get a box. You have a medium sized man, he gets one box. You have a real short dude, he gets two boxes.
Yeah.
And so that's the photo of equity.
Yeah.
That now everyone's on the same level playing field. And I like that version better, of equity. But then that is also somehow implying that if you have the means, if you are big, you don't get anything, and we're taking your box away from you, and we're going to give it to the person who is without, because they are without. And so I don't agree with that image altogether because of that rationale. And
Yeah.
it's like, well, if that shorter guy, are low performers, people who are not doing as great in school, who are mostly minority. If we look at NAEP scores, the folks who are not performing on, academic level are Black and brown students. Okay, so if Black and brown students are the ones who are less than or without, we're going to take from the ones that are doing good to give to the ones that are not. And I don't think I agree with that, because that's kind of entitlement, and that's where we have a lot of students who are very entitled today to that they should just get in this Robin Hood
Of all
mentality.
races. Yes.
Well, yeah. Oh no, in
Yeah.
our races,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
talking about
Yeah.
Black and brown, but I'm saying
Yeah.
just students in general.
Yeah. That's
Like,
why
I'm
I
gonna,
just wanted to
yeah,
emphasize that.
yeah. And so I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that our students, especially Black and brown kids, should have agency over their own lives. Be taught that you are a free person, that you are a free body, that you can make out of your situation whatever you make of it. And that follows you into the classroom. Like, yes, you can read. You may have, yes, your past and then there's this book called The Power of Now. So like living in the now. We're not living in the past. We're not living in slavery. We're not living in what you did yesterday. We're going to focus on the now. And if we can teach these concepts to our kids today, I think they could go a long way. Like for this student who you're B, okay, maybe B is your best today. Like,
Yeah.
cool, that's good.
Yeah.
Should everybody be striving for an A?
Absolutely. Yeah. They should
Yeah,
strive. You could
they
strive for
should.
it. Yeah.
Like, would you
Yeah.
get it? Like, not like,
No.
but you should have the spirit of like of excellence. You should have a
Yeah.
spirit of, I'm gonna give it all that
Yeah.
I can. And we see this. I don't like the whole comparing Black academic test scores to white, their white peers, because to be honest, like the white is not the norm. Like we have a
Okay.
lot of Asian students who are
Yeah.
outperforming Black and white students, and I'm like, why aren't we comparing Black students to Asian students? Like that's what we should
Yeah.
be doing. They would keep saying Black versus to white. Like no,
I'm
compare
so,
them
yeah.
to Asian, because
Yeah.
they're the ones that's knocking it out of the park. And if
Yeah.
we do that, we see that the average student who's of the Asian descent and background, they're studying 6-7 hours a day. Like we see research studies that are showing the parents and how they're like the stress that they're putting on education, and the number
Yeah.
of hours that students from Asian backgrounds are spent studying.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just think that it's it's a catch-22, but I think that
Yeah.
everyone should have agency over their lives.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so glad you read that book, because I was going to ask you about, everyone talks about the academic gap, and in that book, I mean, you probably got to at least that part, I think, so early on, but if the goal is to strive to close that gap to white and Black, then you're settling everyone on being
That's
mediocre,
Yep.
that's a net loss for everyone.
Yeah.
So to compare it to Asian, yeah, I totally agree with that. So how did this experience kind of move you in the direction to, ultimately joining the Department of Education?
Yeah. Oh, that's yeah. Good
I know there's a
question.
big jump in there, but I
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
obviously that played a huge part in, well, maybe if I go to the source, I could do something.
So I spent my so I graduated from high school. And I've been advocating for school choice since then. So I share my story on the national stage, and because I wanted it to make a difference.
Yes.
Um, and then I went to grad school, graduated from grad school, got a call, said, hey, you want to come work for us at the U.S. Department of Education? I had known Secretary DeVos before joining. And so it was a cool opportunity. I got my master's in social work, so I figured that that was how I was going to help and change the world. And so when I got the phone call, I was like, do I really want to do this? I would be working for the Trump administration, and there was controversy still at the time. That was a year into the administration by the time I graduated from grad school. And what should I do it? Would I do it? Of course, you can probably imagine a lot of people in my community and my family were not very pleased with my decision to go work for a sitting president that they thought was XYZ, insert your own beliefs. And I had a lot of people actually tell me, you need to quit. You are working for a racist. Quit. And I didn't. And the reason why I chose to go work for the Secretary DeVos under the Trump administration is because, one, I knew her, and I knew that her heart was for lower income students receiving a high quality education of their parents' choice. That's what she lived, breathed, and would do anything for. And knowing her and her background, it's like, you don't need this job. You're gonna suffer out this backlash for students who grew up like me. I want to be a part of that. And then no one in my entire life background would ever have the opportunity to, like I had. Even many of the people that I worked with, looked up to, had never been called over the phone to say, hey, come work for the president or come work under this administration. So I leapt to it, and that's something that I could pass down. Now that I have a little 2-month-old, and that's something that I can pass down to him. Like, guess what, Mama did? I worked, I worked under the presidential administration. How cool is that?
Can I just say, like, I used to be of that mindset that the 2016 election destroyed everything I knew about the world. I think I was fresh out of college, not going into the politics of it. I'm just more looking back at, I remember the news outlets that I would follow, and they would just spend so much time disparaging Betsy DeVos. And I was just going along with it, like, yeah, she's associated. I can understand. It was totally immature. Like, that was immature of me to think that. But I wanted to point that out because credit to you for just saying, I will go with this because I know that there's something of substance here, because this lady is not who she's painted to be. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like I said, I've known her, and it's so funny. There's this, I cannot remember the name of the video series, but there were these two college student guys, and he would go around to college campuses with a mic and ask, college students questions. And he would ask, like, do you support Betsy DeVos's position? And they were like, no, she's evil. She wasn't even a school teacher, and she's this billionaire. And then they would say, well, do you believe that every kid should have the right to go to the school that best serves them? Yes, I do believe that. Some kids don't work well in this environment. And, and it was like, when they asked about the policy position, everyone in this video was like, yes, that's amazing. I think that we should have that. And they're like, well, that's what Secretary DeVos stands for. And they're like, yeah, but no.
Yeah. It's just, yeah. And again, it goes back to why you chose this name.
Well, it goes back to the teachers unions, and we didn't talk about them, but the unions are the reason they were behind that.
So let's continue with what you were seeing in the, because we're going to definitely talk about the teachers unions, but I want to talk about what you saw as you got into the Department of Education? What surprised you? I know if bureaucracy is all throughout just my experience being a teacher, I can't imagine in the center of it.
Yeah. So, well, while I was there, it was really sad, to be honest, just to see how we already knew from, I grew up in Florida, and the state teachers union sued the program that I benefited from twice, and the state Supreme Court ultimately, kicked it, dismissed each suit, saying, and they stood by students. But being at the federal level, it was different. It was eye opening. First, many of the career employees were former teachers, and we're still paying their teachers union dues. And if anyone has, any knowledge of working at the federal government, before you come on to working at the federal government, you have to tell them all of the monies and past affiliations, current affiliations that you've had. And if any of them are a conflict of interest to the federal government, if any of the organizations that you have worked for has received grant monies or received any type of money from the Department of Education or the federal government, it's a conflict of interest, and you have to sign like a waiver saying like, you're going to be impartial, or that you will step down from any type of thing that may prohibit you from being free.
Yeah.
But you had several people who worked at the Department of Education who currently paid their dues to the teachers union, and the teachers unions, as you can imagine, are so that was one. That's like, how is this even
allowed? How is that allowed?
Yeah. And then you had where everywhere, which was the most disheartening thing for me to witness. Everywhere we tried to go, and if you read Secretary DeVos's book, you will hear about these encounters. Her book is called Hostages No More. Every time we try to visit, different states and go to schools, they would organize protests and rallies and make their schools not invite us to come to the school. You can imagine as
they wouldn't let you. Oh, because of the face of it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it was really sad to have.
Was that only for public schools, or did charter schools? Since she was a defender, did they allow her to come by?
It's actually interesting because there were public schools for sure, privates and charters. There was one school where we actually visited the school. And it was a private school. We visited the school. They were doing amazing work. About a week later, post visit, they came out with a statement. This is a private school, a statement saying that they do not support school choice. They do not support Secretary DeVos. They didn't want her to come. And it was just like, wait, what? We came to you. We had already come. We had a great time. And we took plenty of pictures. What? We see you smiling right there. That didn't seem like, a hostage type of situation there. But yeah, I would say it's always been, when I worked at Secretariat alongside her, I always knew that the teachers unions were public enemy number one. Maybe the mafia, incognito. But working at the federal level, I definitely saw it firsthand. For the president of the teachers union, Randi Weingarten, even during COVID, to want and petition and work behind the scenes with the CDC, in cahoots with the CDC, to keep schools closed, even when Europe and other countries had already opened their schools. When we in America had already opened businesses and parents were back at work physically, and kids couldn't go into classrooms. And she's a billionaire. Like, we have a problem. She's not in the best interest of kids at all.
I agree.
And yeah, it's a sad situation. But they will be defeated. That is the goal, you know, the ultimate goal of this fight, to bring them down.
Yeah.
The great hero and villain story.
My my experience with teachers unions, I only taught for 2 years, and in as you're when you're a preliminary in your when your credential is still preliminary, you have to work 2 years, then you're tenured, and then you can join the union. I think
Mhm.
actually in the first 2 years you could join the union. Point of the story is I did not want to join the union, and it was shocking to the. I remember there were reps who were serving these delicious lunches to everyone on campus, and it had all their political issues like on their flyer and all of that, and uh, I was like, "Oh, can I get a lunch?" Because everyone was getting lunch, and they're like, "Yeah, sure. Do you want to join the teachers union?" And I said, "No, I'm good." And
They wouldn't give you. Huh.
it was this look of shock, like one, you're a person of color. How would you not? Because I feel like
And a
uh,
man.
and a man, and I feel like we can talk about this, I guess, but while I was working as a teacher, I could never tell if people were seeing me more so what their political affiliation was. Like it would just graft it onto me. But with that, when I said no, they were just shocked, and it's amazing the pull they have on teachers because hey, it does provide more security to a certain extent. But I took this picture of their flyer in the teachers lounge, and I wanted to share it with you, and just to see your reaction, if you can like respond, because you're talking about this. Can you read that?
Okay. The CTA member effect. Become CTA member.
Yeah, I guess this is the beware of wolves in sheep clothing. That was front and center every day in the break room.
For the wolves.
So
Freedom to
if
advocate.
you're listening to this on podcast while she's reading this, I will just read the. If you're listening to this on podcast, I will read. This is a flyer for the
Oh,
union in the area
advanced
I was
charter
at.
schools. Oh, here.
Yeah, and I will just read the beware of wolves in sheep clothing section, which shows, of course, a wolf in sheep's clothing right next to the title. Wealthy corporate interests want to privatize our public schools and eliminate your secure pension. Only you and your union stand in their way. You will be contacted by groups with deceptive names who are connected to people like Betsy DeVos and corporate charter schools. Don't be
Wow.
fooled by their false claims. Their goal is for you to drop your union membership so they can weaken our collective power. I'm making a grave error according to this by talking to you, Denisha.
Yeah, no, and then our union power through high membership and participation creates better public schools for our students, better teaching and learning conditions,
Yes.
smaller class sizes and caseloads, though that's not true, higher wages and benefits, more secure retirement, and more say in our profession, which are all not true.
So I just wanted to get it because maybe it can be the jumping off point into what has your experience been with teachers unions, and speak to the person, because I used to be that before I got into school. I just kind of had this. I saw teachers union, and like if someone was endorsed by the teachers union, I'm like, that's good. Teachers are good, right? I don't think that a
Right.
lot of I don't think that a lot of people really know just the political clout
Yeah,
that the teachers union has. I feel they're genuinely just seeing teachers union and thinking teachers good,
that's right.
union solid. So I want to give you an opportunity to speak to them and kindly shake the shoulders a little bit.
Yeah.
Go
Yeah.
ahead.
So, with any labor union, you know, you you think that the purpose of the labor union is for, you know, if anyone wants to take advantage of their peoples,
Yeah.
they will come to bat for them. They will fight any political force, any political elected official, in order to keep their constituents safe and unharmed. In the case of teachers, most of these, you know, cases with, you know, if this kind of labor union, you would think. But most of the reasons why people want to be a part of the teachers unions is so, yeah, they could compete. The union would compete for salary for them.
Yeah.
If a case came out against, a student, say for instance, a hearsay, a student claimed that, I'm going to use you, Nico, as an example because you're a man, and I think men, especially black men or colored men in schools, might have it a little bit hard and would want to be a part of the union to protect them. Say a young girl said, "Hey, Mr. Nico touched me," and Mr. Nico didn't, but nobody believes Mr. Nico.
No one, yeah.
And no one probably would believe, but his union would support him. His union would, a part of his dues, get him a good lawyer and protect Mr. Nico's position, get to the bottom of this. And in many other things, not just lawyering up in salary, but they're supposed to do a number of things to protect their constituents. The problem is with the teachers union is that one, they don't do that. I should say they do. They do because they protect bad teachers. They do.
That's true. Good point.
They protect bad teachers.
Yes.
Some of these teachers who are in our schools, they have their jobs only because the teachers union has continued to back them and support them, and they have had case after case in this scenario
yes.
of mistreatment, and they have kept their jobs. They even, bad teachers who, they've lost their jobs because of maltreatment, and they get a pension. They are still protected by the union, so they do their job sometimes. And
can I just add
interest of kids?
I wanted to also add, in the case of a really egregious mistake by a teacher, if they can't fire that teacher because of tenure, they send that teacher usually to a school that's underperforming.
Yep.
So go ahead.
Yep, they sure do. And so that's what the unions do. And the problem is, like, on this list, it's kind of funny because they said that they're supposed to, with the union, they're supposed to better public schools. Well, we know that that's not true. The recent NAEP scores just came out, and our ninth grade, based on ninth grade test scores, and they're doing twice as bad as they were pre-COVID. So they're 2 grade levels behind. Like none of them went to school during COVID, which thank you to the teachers union. Better teaching and learning conditions. That's not true. If I see another story coming out of Baltimore, Maryland, about the number of schools that don't have electricity and power, the number of schools that are infested with roaches and things like that. Smaller class sizes. That's the number one complaint of teachers. They have too many students in their class, and that's the number one driver why parents are putting their kids into private and charter schools. Because smaller class size, higher wages and benefits. Well, there's a protest happening every other day in California for teachers demanding for more money. Secure retirement. They probably y'all do get some good retirement, and more say in our profession, which is also not
true. They don't want my say. They don't want if they want what they only want to hear.
Yeah.
And you brought up Baltimore, and I'm fascinated by it. I talk about the story of that child or that student who had to repeat all 4 years upon graduation
as valedictorian,
right? Which is I thought I was reading the one where he was told to repeat, and his 0.1 GPA put him at the middle of the whole class, which is like, why does that mean everyone below him had to repeat too?
No, see, but there was another story of the valedictorian of a class in Baltimore having a 1 point something GPA. The valedictorian.
So I bring this up because what fascinates me about that is that Baltimore's per pupil spending is among the highest in the country. So where is that money going?
That's one of the and that's another thing of where is the money going and why the teachers unions is to blame. Because I was just talking to my husband about it the other day. And teachers should have all of the resources at their power to educate students. If a student is getting $15,000 on their head per year, where is that money going? It's being sucked up by administration. We know that it's being sucked up by the district, by the state and city department, the district
workers, specialists, professional developments.
Yeah, that's where it's being not being spent on the students. When teachers have to spend their own resources to buy crayons and pencils and billboard paper for their classrooms, we have a problem. I was telling him, I said, I don't think that with teacher salaries that it's the case of they're being paid so significantly low. It's also what are they spending their monies on? Because most of their salaries, I taught as a paraprofessional, and I paid for materials and stuff out of my own pocket. For my classroom. So so if I have to spend my salary in order to buy materials for my class, that's not fair. And that's not $15,000 per student. Where's that money? Like parents should be able to see that money. Teachers should be able to see that money. And when you look in the average public school classroom, you don't see that money. And that's why, we make the case for school choice. The average scholarship is about $9,000. I'm sorry, the average charter school is about $9,000, per student. And for private schools, the average scholarship amount across the country is $7,000. And so you can see where the monies that are being spent to educate kids and where it's actually going, and the test scores and the academic achievement data from charters and privates are way better than the students in the district schools, and they're doing it at a significantly lower price than what district schools are doing it for. And it's not a knock at teachers. Back to your other question, it's totally different. Teachers and teachers unions are totally different. The teachers unions are a political interest group, and teachers are the worker bees who are trying to.
They're just trying. They're just trying. Yeah. And I feel like they have good intentions joining it. I always had good relationships with people who were in the union. It wasn't like this adversarial relationship. But what the union would speak for, I'm like that. I don't even think you have teachers agreeing with that.
No, and before Janus, there was a major Supreme Court case that passed a few years ago, and because some unions across the country were automatically enrolling people. They weren't like how yours was set up after you finish your preliminary years. No, you were automatically in the union, and you had to go through a process to opt out of being in the union. Well, after this Supreme Court case passed, it said no, teachers have to opt in to the union. You can't just automatically take money from teachers' paychecks and opt them in. No, they have to actively opt in. And it seems so like it seems like a no-brainer, but that's what was happening across the country. And the teachers unions are using money dues to support candidates that teachers may not agree with. And if they don't agree with it, they couldn't have a say because it was hard for them to opt out.
Well, again, thank you for doing this. This has been a great conversation. I want to give this last 10 minutes to just talking about Black Minds Matter and what's next. What is your current what's on your current agenda? You say you're going against the teachers union, but is it arguing for school choice? Is it putting more giving more marketing towards Black owned schools? What is it?
So with Black Minds Matter this year, we've been focusing on the unions, but really it's more so about championing for school choice and making school choice sexy in the Black community. School choice has been policy driven for many, many years. It's been around for about 30 years and in this country. And so we want to make it sexy. The number of people who utilize school choice in this country are mostly black people, and so we want to make it a movement that looks like us, that feels like us, and then yes, to champion for black owned schools. On our website blackmindsmatter.net, we have the first and the only directory of black owned schools, and it's super cool because this is a niche within a niche, and it's a great talking point and seller against the naysayers and those who oppose school choice, because they often want to say that school choice is somehow racist, and that's not the case. And how can self-determination be racist? We also have where the left wants to champion for black-owned businesses and black entrepreneurship. So we want to include black-owned schools in that conversation. And if you're going to champion for all black-owned business, black-owned schools, it should be in that conversation. And then you're championing for school choice, because if a school is owned by somebody, it's a school of choice. And so, and I just love the stories of these black entrepreneurs. I call them education entrepreneurs, because they are doing it for the kids. You know, many of them were district school teachers, and they decided to launch schools because they wanted to help more, and they didn't want to be confounded into a system. They wanted some more freedoms. So many of the same reasons why we see parents and students choosing schools for their kids is the same reason why we see many of the education entrepreneurs launching these schools for students. And it's just a wonderful thing. And coming up, actually October 20th through 21st, we are having our National Black Founders Summit. This is our first summit. We have lawmakers, founders from school founders from across the country gathering together to learn, to have some fun. They'll be touring one of the Black-owned schools in Atlanta. And it's an amazing time. We do want to continue to call out those Democratic elected officials who look like us but don't support us. They should be voting alongside their constituents and not against their views and their values. And so that's a little bit of what we're up to.
Good. And I'm excited, and I wish you the most success. I hope this is just a fun process, and it sounds like it's going to be a really lively festivity. So anyone, if you guys enjoyed this, if you enjoyed this interview and learned as much as I did, please follow. Where can they follow you, Denisha?
Yes, so you can follow me on Twitter at Denisha M. Weather. That's my maiden name. Or you can go to our website, blackmindsmatter.net, join our movement, follow all the social pages, and you can learn more about the conference there.
Cool. Well, I will put those links in the description. Thanks again for coming on, and I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Like the channel. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you soon. Hopefully you learned a lot. Bye.